Global recovery has meant dismal growth for most of us since 2008. The recent World Economic Outlook update only reaffirms that sentiment. Joining me on this edition of Editor's Take is Anil Padmanabhan, who's going to give us a clearer picture of what does the World Economic Outlook really look like. Thanks, Anil, for joining me on this show. So, very first and foremost question, what does the World Economic Outlook really reveal?
Two big things. One, it has lowered global growth projections. That's not so much a cause for worry because everybody anticipated it. But the big story here is that it is saying in very succinct terms that the emerging market dream run is coming to an end.
Okay, so now this WEP update, World Economic Update, is predicated on two important aspects. One is your policy easing in the euro area as well as the emerging markets. Do you think these two predicated aspects are going to see traction in the near future?
I'm a skeptic. I don't think so because the euro area, what the IMF, the prescription that it is prescribing for the euro area is a fiscal and monetary union, which, as you know, the monetary union exists, the fiscal union requires a political union, and that's easier said than done. There is absolutely no consensus within the euro that you can forge a political union, which on the basis of which the sovereignty of each country to prescribe a fiscal formula for themselves goes away. So that won't happen. On the emerging markets, inflation is gaining momentum, so I don't see interest rate easing coming up so easily.
Also, it says a very interesting aspect, it says there's a minor, push on the global growth figures. 3.5% is predicted for 2012 and about 3.9% for 2013. Now, how minor is a setback going to be for India?
See, for India, the global growth is not such a bad story because exports is not it's important, but not such a dominant part of India's overall growth story. But for countries like China, which are hugely export dependent, the contraction in global growth is bad news. So yes, it plays out differently for different people depending on your structural economy.
Okay, now taking a cue from your skepticism itself, you say, you're not too sure whether this is actually going to lead us anywhere. So what are the risks involved if, the projections made by the World Economic Outlook don't really take off in the long run?
See, the biggest risk is the euro area. If, as the IMF says between the lines, that you need to put this in place, a political and fiscal union. Now, if you don't do that, there is a very high risk of a European meltdown anytime. There's a mess in Spain, Greece is still sorting itself out, and Italy is also in trouble. So this could spread. A contagion in Europe can be devastating for a country like India because it'll impact your global borrowing ability, it'll dry up markets. Worse, it might dry up foreign capital flows because capital will become very risk averse. So then countries like India could take a serious hit if a contagion spreads from Europe.
Now, talking of growth seems quite incomplete if I don't talk about inflation. Now, the inflation data as revealed by the wholesale price index is 7.25%, which is lesser as compared to 7.55% of the previous month. Now, is this, honestly speaking, hope that inflation will continue to drop, or do you think it's just one-off?
No, I think it's too early. It's just one-off which has come. What you should look for is the final number which they've revised for the previous month, which is April, which has actually gone up to about 7.8. So there is a 0.3 or a 30 basis point upward revision built into this. So 7.25 might end up becoming 7.5. So then it's not really a moderation. So you should just wait and watch. Inflation story, the jury is still out there. It is too early, and retail inflation anyway is 10% plus. So we are still a long way to say away from claiming that inflation is ebbing.
Now, there is a very important aspect of the inflation story which you've covered quite extensively, which is the role that monsoons, or rather I should say the drought, is playing. Can you illustrate a little more for the viewers how this entire monsoon story is going to be leading to inflation and what are going to be the ramifications of it all?
No, absolutely. It's a great point you made because what's happening now is the drought, it's not exactly a drought as of now. Let's call it rain deficit. The rain deficit is very alarming at this point. Barring about 24 25% of the country. The rest of the country is facing deficient rainfall. And India, as you know, the summer crop is particularly rain dependent. So lots of central India and northwest India are in the scanty rainfall area. So the agriculture output in these places, particularly oilseeds, cereals, coarse cereals is down, sowing is down like 50%, 40%. So that's really bad news. And you're already beginning to see their prices trading up in the domestic commodity markets. So markets are already anticipating a shortfall in production of pulses, oilseeds and coarse cereals. So this is going to give an upward thrust to inflation. So the failure of the monsoon, it's I think more or less certain that it will impact the crops. It can pick up going forward from here, but then that will help you in a different way. It will help in boosting your reservoirs. So it resolves your drinking water problem or even irrigation, but it will not help the farmers because the sowing season is almost concluded. You got another week more. So the failure of the monsoon is really bad news for Indian agriculture and thereby for the Indian economy.
Okay, now I'm very, impelled to ask you, is there some good news as well? We are fractured by policy. We are having bad monsoons. Inflation figures, you said, are a one-off. Is there anything positive that, the viewer can take back from this discussion?
I'm afraid not, but I think the big good news about this country is the resilience of its people. And there is enormous resilience, and we are seeing that come forth in these two census surveys that we have seen, the ability to become stakeholders in a growth process which has not been particularly inclusive. So they have come about despite our policy. So I am very hopeful that the people of this country will still find some way, some method of happiness in this mess.
So on that note of resilience, thanks so much, Anil, for joining us on this show. So like they say, every cloud has a silver lining. Let's hope we can see a dot of silver in all that grey. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.